Hey everyone and welcome back on the channel. My name is Alex. In today's video we are comparing two shoes about to release, the Nike Zoom Fly 6, it actually just released, and the adidas Evo SL, releasing in March of 25 with a small drop coming out this week when this video releases at the end of October. That's for the availability. Without no further ado, let's go directly into the general info and the comparisons in terms of specs. 160 euros for the Zoom Fly 6, 150 euros, $150 for the Evo SL, a bit cheaper on the Evo SL side. Stack height, we're looking at 42 millimeters on the Zoom Fly 6 side. I don't have the number for the Evo SL, but I would assume this is about 38 millimeters of stack height, maybe even 40. Somewhere in that ballpark. I would assume that the Zoom Fly 6 sits a bit higher in terms of stack height in the heel. 34 in the forefoot for that 8 millimeters drop. I would assume that the Evo SL has a similar stack height in the forefoot, about that 33, 34 millimeters, with a bit less drop on the Evo SL. Weight, we have 272 grams in my size US 11 for this shoe, 244 for a US 10, however, probably converting around 257 for a US 11. So the Evo SL is a bit lighter. Let's go into the upper, and first of all, let's describe and rate the comfort of the two shoes. I didn't have a bad experience with either of them. I think they're, both of them are comfortable. I would, however, say the adidas Evo SL 6, despite being a bit too short for me, because like I said, this is not my true to size fit, and I will review the true to size version as well. I would say that it was a bit more comfortable, with a caveat that we will discuss in a second. The Zoom Fly 6 is not a bad upper by any means. It actually has a very good tongue, a better tongue than the Evo SL. The lockdown in the heel was maybe the only issue I encountered here on the Zoom Fly 6, which I didn't face here in the Evo SL. And overall, I would give the better comfort to the Evo SL. Like I said, the lockdown a bit better again on the Evo SL. The midfoot is a bit more snug and the heel lockdown was better. The midfoot is a bit more roomy on the Zoom Fly 6, but I had a bit of heel slippage in the shoe, and therefore the point for the lockdown isn't going to the Zoom Fly 6. The tongue of the Zoom Fly 6 is better than the one of the Evo SL. No question, it's a fully gusseted tongue. It has nice padding exactly where you need it. Overall, it offers a better interaction with that upper and with that midfoot to forefoot area than the Evo SL. The tongue of the Evo SL is not gusseted, it's a flying tongue which moves a bit in all directions when running. Therefore, the better tongue is the one of the Zoom Fly 6. Fit of the two shoes, the Zoom Fly 6 is a bit more generous in terms of volume, especially here in the midfoot and forefoot area. The Evo SL has a good fit, but it's more of a race-ready, snugger type of fit, a bit more narrow as well, which for some people will be a better experience. I kind of prefer the fit of the Evo SL, but I think the Zoom Fly 6 will be a bit more accommodating to people with, let's call it, wider feet, although I don't think by any means that this is a shoe for people with really wide feet. The insole is gently glued in both shoes. It's easily removable, however, because there's not too much glue that went into the process, so you can remove it, you can put your orthotics, but just be aware that it is glued in, which for shoes that are meant to go a bit faster is not a bad thing, because if you keep the stock insoles, stock sock liners, then you won't have the Eliud Kipchoge 2015 experience with the insole going out of the shoe. Laces, I don't rate any of these laces very high. Both of them are a bit too thin, and the length is actually a bit too short on the Zoom Fly 6. The length is okay on the Evo SL, but they're too thin. If I had to choose, I would go for the laces of the Zoom Fly 6, but none of them is really the perfect laces, if you will. Let's go into the midsole and ride of these two shoes. We have a combination of Zoom X, a PIBA-based compound, and SRO2 EVA-based carrier on the Zoom Fly 6. Here on the Evo SL, you have full Lightstrike Pro midsole, the high-end racing midsole from Adidas, TPE-based, if I'm not mistaken. I would tend to give at least my preference goes for the midsole compound of the Evo SL. It's a bit more responsive, very soft, but not plush. The Zoom X here is super soft, a bit too soft for my liking. Despite the SRO2 carrier helping, none of the shoes have a stiffening element. There's a very small midfoot shank here in this shoe, but you can't really notice it. My preference goes for the midsole of the Evo SL. Plate. The Evo SL has a midfoot shank, which creates a bit of rigidity, a bit of stiffness here in the midfoot area, but nothing dramatic. And again, the flex in the forefoot is really high. The Zoom Fly 6 has a fly plate, and you could be mistaken, to be honest, because of the amount of flex it has and the amount of torsion you can get out of the shoe. It's almost as if it didn't have a plate. So this is really a plate helping to, stabilize a bit the midsole compounds. And other than that, it doesn't have that lever effect, that stiffening effect that some shoes will have with a plate. Very gentle plate. The ride of the two shoes, the Zoomfly 6 has a more, let's say, gentle ride. It's a bit softer, it's a bit more plush, it's a bit more welcoming, it's a bit less direct. It's also requiring a bit more footwork, a bit more work also from the calf muscles to push you forward. Because again, it's less stiff, and it's actually not stiff at all. It has a lot of flexibility. The stack height and the amount of foam help to compensate a bit that very high flexibility in the shoe, but nevertheless, very gentle, very cushioned, very soft, working quite well at all sorts of paces, quite versatile. We'll come back to it, but that's the type of ride you can experience here in the shoe. Very heel striker friendly, with a lot of cushion and a lot of pleasure to a certain extent to heel strike in the shoe. The Evo SL is a bit more direct, a bit more stiff. It has also a rocker point that starts very early at 60% of the length of the shoe, starting from the heel, which you can notice at slower paces. At faster paces, however, it disappears a bit. But because it has less flex, because it has a bit more of that, let's say, compact midsole and compact ride, it also works better, in my opinion, at faster paces. I would describe this shoe as more of a, long run type of shoe with some pickups, whereas the Zoomfly 6, I would say, is more of a cruising 10K type of shoe that I would probably not take to higher paces than half marathon pace, maybe even not marathon pace, whereas the Evo SL, I think, can take you to, even 10K pace, with that idea of a session where you start easy, you cruise, fartlek type of session, and you pick up the pace towards the end. So yeah, that's the ride of the two shoes. I hope it makes sense. Stability, this is actually quite interesting because none of the two shoes is really stable. I think the Evo SL is a bit more stable, mostly because the softness in the Zoomfly 6 creates quite some collapsing, and it's, very heel striker friendly, but it also creates quite some collapsing because, again, of the softness of that compounds. I wouldn't recommend any of the two to people having high levels of pronation, although, like I remind you every time I can, pronation is not a bad thing. But if you have a higher level of pronation, some shoes are less suited for you, or at least you should use them with a bit more care, because they might create injuries and consequences that you might not be interested in, if that makes sense. Let's move on to the outsole. Durability of the two outsoles. This is interesting because Continental rubber is average in terms of durability, I would say, based on my experience and pictures that I received from you out there, our community. I know that Continental rubber can last for that, 500-600 kilometers, depending on how you strike as well. Some people with a very aggressive heel strike and a lot of, rubbing against the ground will probably wear out their Continental rubber much faster, and some people will take it to 1000K, but overall it has an average durability. I would say, however, that I expect the durability to be much better on the outsole of the Zoomfly 6 because it's sturdier, thicker. I can predict the durability fairly easily, unless, a huge surprise or you are running on very rough surfaces. I think this will last a bit longer. Traction, and this is also interesting. I had grip issues with both shoes, which doesn't happen too often to me with my foot strike pattern and my gait cycle. None of the two shoes was super grippy. And to my biggest surprise, Continental rubber, this rubber compound on the outsole of the Evo SL, was actually less grippy than the Nike average or entry-level grip. I tested the two shoes in similar conditions in a park with a bit of wet surfaces, dead leaves. So the battle in terms of traction was very fair. And to my biggest surprise, this wasn't as grippy as I expected, and the Zoomfly 6, to me, has a better outsole. Let's go into that my opinion section where I share my opinion and my assessment about the two shoes. When it comes to the design, I rate the Evo SL higher than the Zoomfly 6. This colorway is also a bit boring in my opinion. This is, again, a very personal take, so you can disagree 100%. I like this colorway, I like this design a bit more. Purpose and versatility. Interestingly, I think the two shoes have a wide range of applications and are very versatile. However, they're not versatile at the same paces. I think the Zoomfly 6 will start a bit lower in terms of paces. This can really be your easy jog shoe, recovery, endurance, up-tempo, and even maybe half marathon shoe for some people. This will start a bit higher. I wouldn't take it for a recovery run. It handles easy paces quite well, but this is not the intended purpose. You will find better shoes for easy recovery paces. Starting at endurance, so a bit higher in the spectrum of paces, this shoe will start to shine, and it will take you to faster paces than the Zoomfly 6 would. Probably, up to 10K, even 5K pace intervals. It's not the perfect shoe for that, but it can handle them. So Both shoes are really versatile, but in my opinion, they're just not versatile in the same spectrum. Value for money and general value, 150 euros, $150, 160 euros, $160. Similar price points, and both of them are good value for money. You're just not getting the same applications again out of the two. If I had to pick a shoe myself, I would go for the Evo SL. It's a bit cheaper, but that's not really the decisive element, the decisive factor. I think this is just because I like the ride a bit more for my personal running style, my gait cycle, my foot strike in the Evo SL. I have nothing against the Zoomfly 6. I had a good time running in it, and I will probably use it again a few times, just also to take it to higher mileage and maybe find out some new things about it. But yeah, if I had to pick, I would go for the Evo SL. I hope you enjoyed this comparison. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I probably didn't cover everything, so feel free to ask me anything. Feel free to ask me also to compare these shoes against other shoes. In the meanwhile, enjoy your run today, enjoy your ride, and go beyond your limits. I will see you in the next one.